So reading that definition from Random House, I was less satisfied with it. And I went out on the internet to try to find a definition that I was more comfortable with. And actually, the definition I like the best comes from Wikipedia. And that says that it's rudeness, attacks, aggression, or other behavior aimed at disrupting the community that lead to unproductive stress and conflict. Not that lead to conflict, but lead to unproductive stress and conflict. And so one of the things that's most important in being a blogger is to define what you're willing to tolerate, what your goals are, and again, defining a metric by which to measure those goals. I don't always do it perfectly. Tom, if you tweet that, I'll kill you.
The imperfect part or the rest?
The imperfect part.
Never. You're perfect.
Right, because you can't be a domestic and laboratory goddess if Tom Levinson tweets that you're imperfect. But I try. I try. And so the synonyms for incivility, if you read my blog, are things like douchiness, asshattery, fuckwititude, and whack-balloonary. The antonym of that is fucking with dumbasses on the internet, which is a term that was coined by Drug Monkey. And that means kind of blatantly poking at the people who would aim to derail the conversation. And sometimes there's a benefit to doing that. So what are the consequences of incivility on your blog? Things can really take a turn for the worse. So being an active, not an active moderator, but an active participant in your online community is very valuable. So what about the language of blogs? Well, if you've read my blog, you know that my language can tend to be a bit colorful. And I think that that colorful language can have a place, and it's about looking at the intent of the language. So these are some comments that I've gotten in my comment section that I've actually left up because I think that they too serve a purpose. But on the other hand, I have a good colleague by the name of Physioprof who's kind of known for being a foul-mouthed dude who said this about, in reference to some graduate students and some postdocs who had asked him a question about being a second, if you ever read a paper and they have little asterisks, and the second, third, fourth, fifth, and ninth author all contributed equally to this work. And he basically said, in this very colorful language, well, that's really bullshit. Nobody cares about that asterisk except your mother. So, you be the first author or you don't be the first author. And even though his language here is very colorful, the advice is very good. And he really has reached and mentored a very large segment of undergraduates and postdocs who may not have had that degree of mentoring. So, at least from my standpoint, the science blogosphere is serving a very valuable purpose. And appearances can be deceiving. You can take crazy, and you can dress it up nice, and put it on Oprah, and it's still crazy. So what it comes down to is trying to teach the public to evaluate the message, not necessarily the appearance of the message. So what are my responsibilities as a blogger? I have responsibilities to my university, who employs me, thank you, and to my students in my laboratory, and I have a responsibility to not let them get distracted by the activities that I engage in. So why be pseudonymous? Well, one reason is to protect their education, because if I'm trivially Googleable, so are they. And that means that if I receive email from an animal rights activist, who, I've tweeted a lot about animal rights, and every time I do, the Animal Liberation Front picks it up, and they retweet it with the tags murderer, target, danger. If I'm trivially Googleable, so are they. And these are 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. And I have a responsibility to protect their education. I have a responsibility to the scientific community. And I would say that as a pseudonymous blogger, I have been more effective in influencing my academic society than I have if I had written under my real name, which is interesting. I have a responsibility to my family, who I love, who hasn't seen me in 10 days, but I love them. And I also have a responsibility to my own professional career development. And part of what I'm starting, I think, to be able to be successful doing is taking this crazy blog stuff and turning it into a mainstream activity for scientists, especially, for example, in our new establishment of some advocacy groups and our ability now to do some effective fundraising. My academic society has begun a podcast. After seeing my blog, some of the members of the society have started their own blogs, and that's really, I think, helping merging the voices of scientists with the public. They're not always doing it right, but they're doing it. And so I think that one of the places that people like you are the most valuable is in helping to teach them how to interface effectively with the public. Because I'm not trained as a journalist. I just say a lot of bad words. And sometimes that's good because it gets traffic. But in terms of having been trained as a journalist, there's a lot of things that have been missing in my education that I had to sort of learn myself coming forward. And I also have a responsibility to continue to find all this shit hilarious, otherwise it's just not worth doing. So, what's the difference between anonymity and pseudonymity? Well, the difference is that before I gave this talk, I went to my department chair and said, if I say this at Harvard, are you going to fire me? And he said no. My department chair knows my real name and my pseudonym. Everyone in my department knows. My students know. Many of the members of my academic society knows. Many of the members of the blog community know. But there's a difference between actively managing your image, and it's important to me to keep my blog life separate from my research life, mostly because I don't want them to interfere with each other, than being anonymous and thinking that you can say whatever it is that you want to say. I have no doubt if I really went off the deep end and said something really crazy, there would be very important professional consequences for what I'm doing. So I think that's something that when we have these discussions about scientists who write under a pseudonym, it's important for us to very actively distinguish. There's a difference between the person who comes into your comment section anonymous from a non-trackable IP and says something wacky to somebody who has an established persona on the internet. And that's what I've done, and that's what having a pseudonym is. So what are the consequences of being trivially Googleable when you write under your real name? The safety of your lab and your research program. And for me, that's the #1 reason to remain with a pseudonym. I have academic funding, I have students, and I want to protect those. The ability to continue your scientific discourse without people saying, oh yeah, and your ISIS, what about those shoes? Tenure and promotion, and your own personal safety, especially since I talk a lot about animal rights activism. So what's the real benefit of pseudonymity for me? And that's been in creating an active online community where women and minority women, graduate students and postdocs feel more comfortable interacting with me under a pseudonym than they do interacting with some of the faculty that they're with. While I was at experimental biology, I sent out a tweet because I had a research faculty member have a little bit too much to drink and slap my backside. And I tweeted it. I said, I just got groped at experimental biology. That's kind of crazy. And I got this email from a young woman whose name I've taken off of the email. I met a really, really, really famous scientist in our field today. He was making jokes about my unique name, and I'm used to that, but it did feel a little weird. Then he slid over on the bench during dessert, put his arm around me, grabbed my ass, and said, that looks good. I said, oh yeah, that must be a really good Sunday. And then he said, I was talking about you. At first I felt like I was imagining things, but there were lots of witnesses. I subsequently fused asses with a female professor who was sitting next to me. I didn't have another bite of dessert, and I felt like I wanted to throw up. So much for imagining things. It felt so gross. And the very last line of the email, I get a little choked up, said, at least I know I'm not alone. So, in my talking about this on the internet, the types of things that happen in academia, this is somebody who felt like she had an online community. And for me, that's worth all of it. So, thank you so much for inviting me.